Hey everybody, what is up? Welcome back to Final Trade. Today I have the red-white Flames of Wrath pre-constructed deck from Tempest. This was kind of a creature deck with a lot of burn in it. It's interesting that they shoehorned white in here. This makes it the only enemy-colored deck out of the four pre-constructeds, and it's the one that splashes the secondary color the least. There are only 5 planes in here, and there are only 4 cards that take white mana. So it just very minorly puts white in here, I guess, to show new players that hey, you can put multiple colors in a deck. This is a thing. So what's in this deck? Oh, first off, wow. 4 Mog Fanatics and 3 Fire Slingers, staples of Sly decks of the era, and this is a really good start. So I kind of wish they'd had some Jackal Pups, but hey, you take what you can get, and those are great cards. 2 Lightning Elementals. You know, it's a degenerate ball lightning, not nearly so good, but we'll take it. It's persistent, at least. It doesn't get buried at the end of the turn like ball lightning. 2 Wild Worms. Now, 4 mana for a 5/4 is nice, but there's a 50% chance that he just ends up back in your hand. So, a little bit volatile, but I always love the coin flipping mechanic in Magic when I can get it. And I think this is a cool thing to put into a pre-constructed deck, especially remembering that this only drew cards from Tempest. So the rest of the creatures to round it out, Flowstone Salamander, all these Flowstone and Sandstone creatures they had in the Rath cycle, they were always pretty bad. So it's kind of expensive, and yeah, it can pick off blockers before blockers can deal damage to it, but just not that great. Sandstone Warrior, yeah, you have to pump him up, but he costs a lot to put into play. I'd rather have a cheaper creature to put into play and not have to, persistently pay to have him deal decent damage. Flowstone Giant, this one's actually okay. He'll turn into a 5/1 when you activate his ability, so I think he's okay. Firefly, this is like a terrible version of Shivan Dragon. What was Shivan Dragon? Was it 6 mana for a 5/5 with the same ability? So for 2 mana more, you got +4/+4 compared to this. And, this is the only flyer in the deck, too. Magmasaur, this is one of your 3 rares in this deck. Remember, these pre-constructed decks obeyed the same rarity concentration as normal randomized starter decks that were sold in the era. So this is one of your 3 rares. It's actually okay. You can nuke a bunch of small creatures, like if you're playing against the Swarm or the Sliver pre-constructed decks. So I think this is actually pretty decent. The last 2 creatures to round it out, the Coiled Tin Viper, nothing to write home about, and the Soltari Gorillas. Keep in mind these are gorillas, not gorillas, and they have their cool little ability to snipe people if they are unblocked, which, being Shadow, they probably will be. Now, on to the burn spells. 4 Kindles. Kindle is kind of a crappy card, but in this context where you only had the limited burn spells from Tempest to put in this deck, I think it's fine. It's pretty good, and, an average game, you might see 2 copies of it, and so you'll deal 5 damage total. And the same with Lightning Blast. Lightning Blast, compared to all the rest of the burn spells that existed in the vintage or pre-modern era of Magic, it's pretty bad, but just amongst Tempest, I like it. It works out. Searing Touch, give the player some exposure to the buyback keyword, but wow, it's really hard to justify 5 mana for this when you have Flowstone creatures that could take the mana more efficiently and deal damage with it. And then Blood Frenzy, I always liked this card. You can kind of use it creatively to kill your opponent's creatures too. 2 copies of Disenchant. What can I say? If you're going to put white in a deck, it probably ought to have Disenchant in it. So, works pretty good. Rolling Thunder is a really good addition, and this is nice that you can use it to pick off a bunch of small creatures at once. The enchantments in this deck, Tangarth's Rage, another one that you can use to kill a small opponent creature outright. Goblin Bombardment is a nice card to finish the game with by just sacrificing everything you have after you've attacked with it. And oh boy, Furnace of Wrath. I've always loved this card. It's terrible, but I loved it. And I think it works in this deck because there's a lot of situations where you can throw it down and then attack and win the game immediately. It's not a card that you want to leave out in play with the opportunity for your opponent to use it. And I remember back when these decks were new in 1997, kids, this was the most popular of the four. And so a lot of kids playing in the library at school in the morning had Furnaces of Wrath. And gosh, was it fun. Pacifism, just a tiny bit of control to take out a creature. Squeeze Toy, an awful, awful card. So useless. Almost anything would have been better than this. And I guess the problem is damage prevention has never been strong in Magic, and this is a common. Just give me any other common. Give me another lightning elemental. I'd rather have that. Maze of Shadows, an uncommon to take care of, well, one shadow creature per turn. I guess that's an okay inclusion. And the rest is Mountains and Plains. I find this deck, in the playtesting I've done so far, it's all right. The mana curve is a little high, and you know, there's so many different creatures. With all of these in here, there's like, 10 different unique creatures in this deck, 11 maybe. So it's a little inconsistent. The burn spells are nice, and the addition of Disenchant is really nice. So I think this is a decently conceived deck. I know kids enjoyed this back when it was new because this was the one they bought and the one they stuck with. And I remember a lot of kids, what they would do initially is as soon as they got a couple booster packs, they would just pull all the white out of this deck and substitute in whatever red cards they got from booster packs. So I think this was a good deck overall. Now, compared to the other three pre-constructed Tempest era decks, I think this is probably going to end up being the third best. It won't be as bad as the Sliver deck, but I do not think it'll be as good as the Swarm or Deep Freeze, which I think will be the best one. So if you want to find out as we play through these decks, we're gonna do kind of a round robin thing, play all of them against each other, and just see how they stack up. So if you want to see that, like, comment, share, and subscribe, and join me on Final Trade. Thanks a lot.